David pulled into his driveway and nearly slammed the brakes when he saw the bright red sold sign planted in his front yard. His heart skipped a beat. Confused, he glanced at the house, expecting to see a prank or a mistake. Instead, he saw strangers carrying boxes inside his home. For a moment, he thought maybe he had pulled into the wrong driveway. He double-checked the address. No, this was his house, the same porch swing, the same ridiculous garden gnome his wife bought on sale, the same house he had lived in for years. A man in cargo shorts and a woman in yoga pants stood by the moving truck, directing movers. They looked settled, happy, like they had just found their dream home. David stepped out of his car, his voice shaking with disbelief. Excuse me, what the hell is going on here? The couple turned to look at him, the man raising an eyebrow. Who are you? David's stomach clenched. I live here, this is my house. The woman laughed nervously, clutching a folder of papers. No, it's our house, we just bought it from the HOA. David blinked. The HOA, his voice rose in pure, boiling confusion. I'm not even in an HOA. The man sighed, flipping through the document. Look, I don't know what's going on, but we legally bought this place. Here's the deed transfer. He held up a paper with David's address, but instead of his name, there were two strangers listed as the new owners. David's hands clenched into fists, his pulse pounded in his ears. This wasn't just a mistake, this was a nightmare. Then came the smug, nasal voice that made his blood run cold. Oh, you're back, didn't think you'd return so soon. David turned. A woman in her 50s with a platinum blonde bob and a sweater tied around her shoulders like some suburban warlord stood on the sidewalk, smirking. Patricia Reynolds, the neighborhood busybody, the self-proclaimed president of an HOA that didn't actually exist. Behind her stood an older woman David recognized as his next-door neighbor, Rosa Vasquez. The 70-year-old widow looked deeply uncomfortable, her eyes darting between David and Patricia. She seemed to want to say something but remained silent. David narrowed his eyes. Patricia, what did you do? She scoffed, folding her arms. We, the Homeowners Association, declared your property abandoned after your extended absence. You can't just leave a house empty like that. We have rules. David's blood boiled. I've been gone for 3 weeks on a work trip, not months, not years, 3 weeks. Patricia continued, all faux sympathy. Since it was considered abandoned, we exercised our right to claim it and sell it to a responsible new owner. You weren't maintaining the property. The grass got a little long, the mailbox was overflowing, clear signs of neglect. David's jaw dropped. Are you out of your damn mind? You sold my house because my grass was long. Patricia gave a tight, satisfied smile. It's nothing personal, it's about maintaining neighborhood standards. David turned to the new homeowners, desperate. You guys seriously thought this was legit? The man hesitated, glancing between the paperwork and David. We were told it was a foreclosure under HOA rules. Everything checked out legally. David let out a humorless laugh. Oh, I guarantee you it didn't. But before he could say anything else, the police showed up. Patricia, of course, had called them. There's a trespasser on private property, she said in a sing-song voice. David saw red. He was standing on his driveway arguing about his house, and now the cops were looking at him like he was the problem. One officer stepped forward, resting a hand on his belt. Sir, I need you to calm down. David's voice was shaking from sheer outrage. Calm down, these lunatics just stole my house. The officer sighed, flipping through the papers handed to him by the new homeowners. This looks like a civil matter. If you have a problem, you'll need to take it to court. Rosa stepped forward then, her voice trembling slightly. Officer, I can confirm this is Mr. Mitchell's home. I've been collecting his mail for him while he was away on business. Ms. Reynolds told me she had his permission to handle some neighborhood matters, but not to sell his home. Patricia shot Rosa a venomous look. Stay out of this, Rosa. You're not even a legal member of this community. The officer raised an eyebrow at Patricia's comment, but Rosa stepped back, visibly intimidated. David realized there was history here he didn't fully understand. David's stomach twisted. He had read stories like this before, homeowners losing their property through fraudulent HOAs, loopholes, and legal red tape, but he never imagined it could actually happen to him. Patricia smirked. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay, David. These lovely people actually pay their HOA dues. That was it. That was the moment something in David snapped. He wasn't just going to fight this. He was going to burn her entire fake HOA empire to the ground. He pulled out his phone and made one call. Alexis, he said, voice tight, I need you to bury someone in legal hell. Alexis's laughter rumbled through the phone. "Oh, someone finally pissed you off enough to call me." David stared at Patricia, whose smugness faltered for the first time. "Oh yeah," David said, voice deadly calm, "and I want to ruin them." Patricia's expression flickered. She had no idea who Alexis was, but she was about to find out. Because Alexis wasn't just a lawyer, she was a litigation monster who ate HOA fraudsters for breakfast. And Patricia, she was already choking. "Is that your attorney?" the officer asked, suddenly more attentive. "Because if there's legitimate dispute over ownership, we might need to." "Officer Ramirez," came a booming voice from across the street. A tall man in an expensive suit was striding toward them. "What seems to be the problem here?" Patricia's face lit up. "Councilman Blake, thank goodness you're here. This man is harassing the new homeowners." David's heart sank. Of course, Patricia had connections in local government. That explained her confidence. Councilman Blake turned to the officer. "I trust you can handle this disturbance appropriately. Ms. Reynolds is a personal friend and a valued community leader." Officer Ramirez straightened his posture. "Yes, sir, I was just explaining that this is a civil matter." David felt the situation slipping further away from him. Not only had his house been stolen, but now political pressure was being applied to make sure he couldn't get it back. The next morning, David woke up on his best friend's couch, still fuming. He had barely slept, replaying every insane moment of the previous day in his head. His house, his own damn house, had been stolen out from under him, and the police had just shrugged and told him to take it to court. If there was any justice in the world, Patricia and her ridiculous fake HOA should be the ones in handcuffs, not walking around acting like they owned the entire neighborhood. Alexis, his lawyer and college roommate, had been way too excited when David explained the situation the night before. David had expected sympathy, maybe some outrage, but instead, Alexis had grinned like someone had just handed her a winning lottery ticket. "You don't understand," she had said, practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "I love taking down fake HOAs. This is going to be fun." David wasn't sure what part of his life being turned upside down was supposed to be fun, but he knew one thing: Alexis was the best damn lawyer he had ever met, and right now, that was his only hope. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Rosa. "Need to talk. Meet at Parkside Cafe in 30 minutes. Important information about Patricia." David hesitated. Rosa had seemed afraid of Patricia yesterday, but she had also tried to speak up for him. Maybe she knew something that could help. By noon, David, Alexis, and Rosa were sitting in a booth at the local cafe, Rosa nervously looking over her shoulder every few minutes. "I'm sorry I couldn't say more yesterday," Rosa whispered, her accent thickening with anxiety. "Patricia, she has been doing this for years, not just collecting fake HOA fees but targeting homes, always people who are vulnerable, elderly, traveling for work, non-English speakers." Alexis leaned forward. "How many homes has she taken?" Rosa's eyes welled with tears. "3 that I know of. Mine would have been 4th, but my grandson moved in last year." She backed off when he started asking questions. "Why hasn't anyone reported her?" David asked. "Fear," Rosa said simply. "She is connected. Her brother-in-law is Judge Reynolds, her friend Blake is on the city council, and she knows things about people, secrets." Alexis was typing furiously on her laptop. "Rosa, would you be willing to testify to this?" Rosa paled. "I am not." "She's undocumented," David realized suddenly. That's what Patricia meant about not being a legal member of the community. Rosa nodded miserably. "She has been threatening to report me if I speak out." "That's witness intimidation on top of everything else," Alexis muttered, still typing. "Rosa, I may be able to help with your immigration situation, but first, I need to understand everything Patricia has been doing." For the next hour, Rosa told them about Patricia's elaborate neighborhood scam. Not only had she created a fake HOA, but she was working with a local real estate developer, coincidentally owned by Councilman Blake, to acquire properties cheaply and flip them for massive profits. The new homeowners weren't even real buyers, but actors hired to create the appearance of legitimate sales until the properties could be properly transferred to the development company. "This isn't just fraud," Alexis said, flipping through her notes. "This is organized crime." David exhaled sharply. "What do we do now?" "We go to war," Alexis replied, her voice hard. "But first we need to make sure Rosa is protected." By late afternoon, they were sitting in Alexis's office, going over every detail. Alexis leaned back in her chair, flipping through the paperwork Patricia had filed. "So let me get this straight. You were gone for 3 weeks and this lunatic decided your house was abandoned and sold it." David exhaled sharply. "Yep, because my grass got a little long." Alexis whistled. That's a new one. Usually these frauds at least pretend to have real legal backing, but this is amateur hour. She flipped to another page and burst out laughing. Oh my God, look at this. She literally signed the sales contract herself as the president of the HOA. David frowned and Alexis's grin widened. And there it is. There is no official HOA. It doesn't exist. There's nothing in the county records, no formal association, nothing. Patricia just made it up. David's jaw tightened. So what does that mean? Alexis leaned forward. It means she's screwed, and I mean royally screwed. This is fraud, wire fraud, real estate fraud, and I can probably argue for theft on a grand scale. Plus, if she collected money from other homeowners in the neighborhood under the guise of an HOA, that's embezzlement. Just then her office phone rang. Alexis answered, her expression growing serious. I see, yes, I understand. She hung up, turning to David with concern. That was Rosa's grandson. 2 men claiming to be ICE agents just tried to detain her. Fortunately, he knew enough to demand proper identification and they took off when challenged. David felt sick. Patricia is going after her. This just got more complicated, Alexis admitted. We're not just fighting Patricia, we're fighting a corrupt system. But, her eyes hardened, that just means we need bigger guns. She picked up her phone again. Janet, get me Congressman Martinez's office. Tell them it's about that real estate corruption case they've been investigating. David's eyes widened. You know a congressman? Alexis winked. I know lots of people, David. That's why you called me. David's rage simmered just under the surface. So we can sue. Alexis grinned like a shark. Oh, we're going to do a hell of a lot more than sue. Within hours, Alexis had drafted a lawsuit so brutal it could have been a medieval execution order. Fraud, property theft, illegal sale of real estate, misrepresentation, conspiracy, racketeering. Patricia was looking at enough charges to drown in legal fees alone. But that wasn't even the best part. Alexis had also filed an injunction to freeze all transactions on the house, which meant that the new homeowners, or rather, the actors pretending to be homeowners, couldn't legally take possession. The house was still tied up in David's name. There's one more thing, Alexis said, sliding a folder across her desk. Congressman Martinez's office sent this over. It's a federal investigation into Blake Development for money laundering and tax evasion. They've been using fake property transactions to clean dirty money. Your house was just the latest in a long series. David flipped through the pages, stunned. This is so much bigger than Patricia and her fake HOA. Exactly, which means we need to be extremely careful. These people won't go down without a fight. That evening, David and Alexis drove back to the neighborhood. The moving truck was still parked outside, but the new homeowners were nowhere to be seen. Patricia, however, was standing in the driveway, laughing with a group of neighbors. David's anger burned hot. He had been planning to avoid a confrontation, but seeing her standing there, acting like nothing had happened, was the final straw. He strode right up to her, watching her expression shift from amusement to annoyance. Oh, you again? Patricia crossed her arms. I thought you would have moved on by now. David smirked. Oh, I have. I moved on straight to a lawsuit. Patricia blinked. Excuse me. Alexis stepped forward, waving the thick legal document in front of her face. Congratulations, Patricia. You're being sued for fraud, theft, and about a dozen other things that are going to financially ruin you. Patricia's smugness wavered. You can't. Oh, I can, Alexis interrupted smoothly. And I already did. In fact, I've also reported you to the County Fraud Department, Real Estate Commission, and oh yeah, the FBI, because I have a feeling this little real estate scam you've been running with Councilman Blake has federal implications. At the mention of the FBI, one of the neighbors, a stocky man with a permanently furrowed brow, quickly excused himself and hurried away. David noticed, making a mental note that he might be involved as well. Patricia's face lost a little color. This is ridiculous. David folded his arms. Is it because the judge didn't seem to think so when he froze the sale of my house? Those poor buyers you scammed, yeah, they legally can't move in. The sale is invalid, and you just committed a major crime. Patricia sputtered, you can't sue the HOA, we have rules. Alexis actually laughed. You don't even have an HOA, Patricia, you made it up. There's no board, no legal filings, nothing. You just decided you were in charge and started scamming people. Patricia opened her mouth, then shut it again. Her confidence had cracked, but she wasn't ready to crumble just yet. This is just a misunderstanding, she tried, her voice a little higher now. I was just trying to protect property values. Alexis shook her head. Yeah, tell that to the judge. Oh wait, you'll have plenty of time to do that next week when you appear in court. Patricia's eye twitched. She was starting to understand this wasn't just a mild inconvenience. She was in serious legal trouble. David smirked. Oh, and one more thing. Since you technically sold my house under false pretenses, I'm also suing for damages. Patricia swallowed. Damages. Alexis grinned. Oh yeah, we're talking pain and suffering, loss of property use, and my personal favorite, emotional distress. Patricia's face twisted. You can't do this. David laughed. Patricia, I already did. She spun on her heel and marched away, but her usual smugness was gone. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, David felt like he had the upper hand. As they got back in the car, David exhaled deeply, tension leaving his body. God, that felt good. Alexis chuckled. Oh, trust me, the best part hasn't even started yet. When we get to court, that's when she'll really regret messing with you. David nodded. He wasn't just fighting for his house, he was about to end Patricia's entire fake empire. Their victory was short-lived. The next morning, David woke to frantic banging on his friend's door. It was Rosa's grandson, Miguel, looking terrified. They took her, he shouted. 2 men, they showed badges this time, real ones, and they took my grandmother. They said she's being deported. David felt the blood drain from his face. Patricia made good on her threat. Alexis was already on the phone, her voice sharp and commanding. This is Alexis Hernandez. I need to speak to Supervisor Collins immediately. Yes, it's an emergency. It's regarding a witness intimidation case involving ICE. While Alexis worked her legal magic, David and Miguel raced to the detention center. Upon arrival, they were stonewalled by officials claiming no record of Rosa's detention. That's impossible, Miguel shouted. I watched them take her. The ICE official shrugged disinterestedly. No record of a Rosa Vasquez being processed today. David's phone rang. It was Alexis. They're moving her, she said without preamble. Blake pulled strings to fast-track her deportation. They're trying to get rid of our key witness before the hearing. David's heart sank. Can you stop it? I'm trying, but they're deliberately burying her in the system. We need more time. Just then, a text came through from an unknown number. Drop the lawsuit or the old lady gets sent back to Mexico tonight. Last chance. David showed Miguel the message. The young man's face hardened with resolve. Do not give up your house, Mr. Mitchell. My grandmother would never want that. I won't, David promised, but I'm not letting them take Rosa either. Back at Alexis's office, they regrouped. We need to move faster, Alexis said, spreading papers across her desk. I've expedited the hearing to tomorrow morning, and Congressman Martinez is personally intervening in Rosa's case, but there's a problem. What now? David asked, exhausted. Judge Reynolds, Patricia's brother-in-law, is assigned to our case. David's stomach dropped. They've rigged the system. Yes and no, Alexis replied thoughtfully. Reynolds can't be too obvious about his bias, especially with the media attention this case is getting. Local news picked up the story this morning. Fake HOA steals house while owner away. Media attention might help, Miguel said. Make it harder for them to disappear my grandmother. Alexis nodded. Exactly, and it puts pressure on Reynolds to recuse himself, which he should do given the conflict of interest. And if he doesn't, David asked. Then we expose him too, Alexis said simply. No one is untouchable, not Patricia, not Blake, not even a judge. That night, David couldn't sleep. Everything was spiraling out of control. What had started as a simple property dispute had escalated into a conspiracy involving corrupt officials, witness intimidation, and potential deportation of an innocent woman. The stakes had risen beyond just his house. It was about justice now, about standing up to people who thought their power made them invincible. He stepped outside for some air and noticed a car idling across the street, its headlights off. Someone was watching him. He'd been around long enough to recognize intimidation tactics. They were trying to scare him into backing down. Instead, he took a photo of the license plate and sent it to Alexis. Her response came immediately. Got it. Don't engage. Remember, we're fighting this in court, not on the streets. The day of the court hearing arrived faster than David expected. He sat outside the courtroom with Alexis, running a hand through his hair as the reality of the situation settled in. The last few days had been a whirlwind of legal filings, frozen transactions, and Patricia trying and failing to manipulate her way out of the mess she had created. She had sent passive-aggressive emails, attempted to talk the new homeowners into working things out, and even called in some of her fake HOA supporters to vouch for her. None of it worked. The law was on David's side, and now it was time to prove it. Any word on Rosa? David whispered to Alexis. She nodded, a small victory in her eyes. Congressman Martinez located her. She's safe and the deportation has been temporarily halted, but she won't be here for the hearing. David's heart sank. Without Rosa's testimony, their case was weaker. Don't worry, Alexis assured him. I have another witness. Before David could ask who, the bailiff called them in. David stood tall, his heart pounding as he walked into the courtroom. Patricia was already seated at the defendant's table, looking more rattled than usual. The confidence, the smug superiority gone. In its place was a woman who knew she was in deep trouble but was still grasping at any last shred of control. To David's surprise, Councilman Blake was seated behind her, whispering urgently with a team of expensive-looking attorneys. Clearly, he was worried about how this case might affect him. Most shocking of all, Judge Reynolds was indeed presiding, despite the obvious conflict of interest. His face was a mask of professional detachment, but David could see the calculation in his eyes. The judge, an older man with a stern face and a no-nonsense attitude, looked over the case file for a long moment before adjusting his glasses. "Let me get this straight," he said, glancing at Patricia. "You, as president of a homeowners association, sold this man's house because you believed it was abandoned." Patricia cleared her throat and lifted her chin. "Yes, Your Honor. As per HOA guidelines, abandoned properties are subject to recovery and resale to maintain neighborhood standards." The judge flipped a page in the file. "According to the county records, there is no registered homeowners association in this neighborhood." Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's a clerical error." Alexis let out a quiet chuckle, and David had to fight the urge to smile. The judge was already unimpressed. This was going to be easier than expected. The judge turned his sharp gaze back to Patricia. "And you were the sole person responsible for overseeing this transaction?" Patricia nodded. "Yes, as the acting president of the HOA." Alexis stood up. "Your Honor, let's be clear about something. She was not acting as the president of anything. This HOA does not exist in any legal capacity. There was never a vote, no registration, no tax filings, no board. She just took it upon herself to invent authority and then used that to commit fraud." Patricia scoffed. "That's not true." Alexis smirked. "Then please provide the court with the official HOA documentation." Patricia hesitated. I don't have it with me at the moment." The judge frowned. "Do you have it at all?" Silence. Alexis folded her arms. "Interesting. Because according to county records, she filed false paperwork declaring herself the HOA president 3 days after selling the plaintiff's home, meaning, Your Honor, she committed real estate fraud by operating under false pretenses." Just then, the courtroom doors opened and a man in his 60s entered, immediately drawing all eyes. David recognized him as the actor who had played the new homeowner, the one who had shown him the deed transfer. "Your Honor," the man said, his voice wavering, "my name is Walter Collins. I was hired by Councilman Blake to pose as a homebuyer in this transaction. I'm here to testify that this entire operation was a fraud." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Blake's face turned ashen and Patricia looked like she might faint. Judge Reynolds banged his gavel, calling for order. "Mr. Collins," the judge said slowly, "are you saying you were not actually purchasing Mr. Mitchell's home?" "That's correct, Your Honor," Walter replied. "I'm an actor. Blake Development paid me to create the appearance of a legitimate sale, but the property was always going to be transferred to their company. It's a scheme they've been running for years." Blake stood up, shouting, "This is preposterous. Your Honor, this witness cannot be trusted." Judge Reynolds looked deeply conflicted. If he dismissed Walter's testimony to protect Blake and Patricia, he would appear blatantly corrupt. If he allowed it, his own family member could face serious charges. "I'll remind everyone," he said carefully, "that this hearing is specifically about the sale of Mr. Mitchell's property, not broader allegations against other parties." It was a weak attempt to limit the damage, but Alexis wasn't having it. "Your Honor," she said, "Mr. Collins's testimony directly relates to the fraudulent nature of this transaction. Furthermore, given your familial relationship with the defendant, I move that you recuse yourself from this case immediately." The courtroom fell silent. All eyes were on Judge Reynolds, waiting to see if he would put family loyalty above the law. After what felt like an eternity, he sighed. "In light of the complexity of this case, I will recuse myself. This hearing will be postponed until Judge Martinez can take over tomorrow morning." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. As they filed out of the courtroom, David noticed Blake cornering Patricia in a heated whisper. She looked terrified. Clearly, she was being set up as the fall guy for their larger operation. This isn't over, Alexis warned as they left. They'll regroup and come back stronger tomorrow. David nodded grimly. At least we have Walter's testimony now. And Rosa should be released by morning, Alexis added. With both of them testifying plus the paper trail we've uncovered, we have a solid case. But David couldn't shake the feeling that their opponents would try one last desperate move before admitting defeat. That night, David returned to his friend's house to find the front door ajar. Heart racing, he cautiously pushed it open. The place had been ransacked, drawers emptied, furniture overturned, his laptop missing. His phone rang an unknown number. Mr. Mitchell, a voice he didn't recognize, said smoothly, I believe we can resolve this situation amicably. The house is yours again. Just drop the lawsuit and any criminal complaints and this all goes away. And if I don't, David asked, already knowing the answer. Then things get much more complicated, for you, for your lawyer friend, for everyone. David's grip tightened on his phone. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a way out, one last chance. After hanging up, David immediately called Alexis, who was livid but unsurprised. They're desperate, she said. We need to end this now. She made a few calls, and within an hour, a local news van was parked outside David's house with him giving a live interview about the break-in and threats. The more public this became, the safer they all were. The next morning, they gathered at the courthouse again, this time with both Walter and Rosa present. Rosa looked exhausted but determined. She had spent 2 days in detention before Congressman Martinez secured her release. I am not afraid anymore, she told David, her voice steady. They have taken too much from too many people. Judge Martinez, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for integrity, presided over the reconvened hearing. This time, Patricia looked completely defeated and Blake was conspicuously absent. The proceedings moved swiftly, with testimony from Walter about the fraudulent purchase, Rosa about Patricia's history of intimidation and property theft, and the mountain of documentary evidence Alexis had assembled. The outcome was never in doubt. My ruling is as follows, Judge Martinez declared. The sale of the plaintiff's home is null and void. The property legally belongs to Mr. Mitchell. Additionally, Ms. Reynolds is ordered to pay all associated legal fees and return every dime she has ever collected from residents under false HOA pretenses. Lastly, she will be referred to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to fraud and real estate misrepresentation. Patricia's entire body sagged. The smugness, the superiority, it all crumbled. She had lost. David let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It was over. Furthermore, Judge Martinez continued, in light of Mr. Collins's testimony, I am referring this matter to the FBI for investigation into potential racketeering charges against Blake Development and any associated parties. That last part was unexpected but deeply satisfying. This wasn't just about David's house anymore, it was about bringing down an entire corrupt system. By the time they left the courtroom, the news had already spread. Other scammed homeowners were furious, and Patricia's house, which was legally still hers, for now, had a growing crowd of angry neighbors outside demanding their money back. Alexis grinned as they walked toward the parking lot. That was almost too easy. David smirked. I have a feeling Patricia's going to have a really bad week. Alexis chuckled. Try the rest of her life. The FBI doesn't mess around with real estate fraud, especially when it's connected to money laundering. Rosa approached them, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said, clasping David's hands, not just for yourself, but for all of us who were afraid to speak up. The real thanks goes to you, David replied. Without your courage, we might not have one. A few weeks later, David was finally back in his house. Everything had been returned to normal, well, almost everything. Patricia had disappeared from the neighborhood, forced to sell her own home to cover her debts. The FBI was looking into her finances, and from what David heard, they weren't happy. Blake had been indicted on multiple charges, his development company's assets frozen pending investigation. The new homeowners had thankfully gotten their money back from the shady transaction and had moved on, probably regretting ever dealing with Patricia in the first place. Most importantly, with help from Alexis and Congressman Martinez, Rosa had been granted temporary protected status while her permanent residency application was processed, a small victory in the larger fight for justice. David stood on his front porch, sipping his coffee, when a familiar car pulled up. Alexis stepped out, looking entirely too pleased with herself. Thought I'd drop by and see the kingdom you fought so hard for, she said, eyeing the house. Still standing, no new HOA signs. David laughed. Nope, and if anyone even mentions the word HOA to me again, I might actually lose it. Alexis smirked. Well, in that case, you might be interested in this. She handed David an envelope. Confused, David opened it and stared at the contents. It was a foreclosure notice for Patricia's house. David's eyebrows shot up. You bought her house? Not yet, Alexis grinned, but the bank's auctioning it off next month. Thought you might want to bid on it. David looked at the notice, then at the empty house across the street. A slow smile spread across his face. Oh, he said, taking another sip of coffee, I love that idea. I was thinking, Alexis continued, with all the other victims of Patricia's scam, we could form a real, legitimate homeowners association. Democratic, transparent, and focused on actually helping the community rather than terrorizing it. David considered this. While he had no love for HOAs after his experience, he could see the value in neighbors working together legitimately. You know what? That's not the worst idea. And just like that, the final nail in Patricia's coffin was set. The fake HOA queen had lost everything, and David, he had won in the best way possible. Not just by reclaiming his house, but by helping bring justice to an entire community that had suffered under corruption and fear for far too long. Rosa waved from her garden across the street, no longer afraid to be seen, to belong. Other neighbors, some who had supported David from the start and others who had been too scared to speak up until now, were forming a real community, one built on mutual respect rather than intimidation. As for Patricia's fake HOA, it had been replaced by something authentic, something that actually served the people it claimed to represent, and that, David thought, was the sweetest victory of all.